Invisible power begins long before anyone realizes they are being influenced. It forms in the mind of the silent observer, the one who understands without asking, the one who acts without announcing it. And that's why true power never seems like power. It hides in small gestures, in details that go unnoticed, in eyes that calculate everything without showing intention. Most people believe that control is something explicit, noisy, marked by firm speeches and dominant attitudes. But those who truly understand human nature know that silent dominance is more effective than any direct demonstration. The impact happens when the other person doesn't even realize they've been led. And perhaps that's what has always divided the strong from the weak. The ability to act before the world recognizes it. Imagine observing a room full of people and noticing that everyone is trying to be heard, while only one remains silent, secure, stable, unperturbed. It is this person, precisely the one who seems to do the least, who controls the most. Why? Because silence creates mystery. Mystery creates attention. Attention creates power. And no one can resist trying to decipher what they don't understand. Human beings are drawn to enigma as much as they fear the unknown. And whoever learns to occupy this controlled space between fascination and apprehension comes to govern the movements around them without raising their voice. Invisible power doesn't require physical strength or official authority. It requires perception, inner discipline, and a deep understanding of social psychology. Have you ever noticed how some people manage to influence decisions without giving direct orders? They don't ask, they don't pressure, they don't argue. They simply present ideas, suggest paths, shape the environment, and let others conclude that everything was their own choice. This isn't cheap manipulation. It's a strategic reading of the human mind, a sophisticated way of understanding how people think, react, seek approval, avoid discomfort, and pursue what seems familiar. Those who master this have a silent advantage. They can act behind the scenes while everyone believes they arrived at the conclusions on their own. This is how the invisible architects of results are born. The most curious thing is that invisible power doesn't appear when someone tries to show it. It disappears. If you need to prove strength, you don't yet have it. If you need to justify your authority, you've already lost it. Real control only works when no one realizes it's being used. Explicit influence generates resistance. Implicit influence generates acceptance. And it is in this space that true strength develops, not in confrontation, but in subtlety. Whoever thinks that power lies in speaking loudly has understood nothing about human behavior. The mind resists what pressures it, but follows what intrigues it. And perhaps the most unsettling question is, how does someone achieve this level of influence? It's not a natural gift. It's not something reserved for a select few. It's a trainable skill built from observation, analysis, patience, and self-control. What distinguishes the strong is the willingness to see what most ignore. The hidden patterns and attitudes, the meaning of small hesitations, the strength behind silence, the impact of disguised emotions. When you begin to see beyond the surface, you realize that no one acts randomly. There is always a reason, a hidden wound, an undeclared desire, a governing fear. And those who understand what governs people begin to predict their choices even before they make them. This understanding changes how you exist in the world. You stop reacting and start anticipating. You stop feeling threatened and start observing. You stop trying to prove something and start controlling the social rhythm around you. This transforms how you position yourself, how you respond, how you behave under pressure. And little by little, you become what few manage to be. Someone who doesn't need validation, who doesn't react to chaos, who keeps their own mind intact, even when everything around seems unstable. It is in this state that invisible power flourishes, because its protection lies precisely in the fact that no one can read you completely. But there is something even deeper. Silent power is not a mask, not a performance, not a role to be played. It is born from within, from a mature relationship with one's own strengths and weaknesses. To exert real influence, you must first master yourself. And mastering yourself means recognizing your fears, your impulses, your needs, and dismantling them piece by piece until nothing within you is easily manipulated. Whoever loses internal control loses external power. Whoever understands themselves becomes impenetrable. And it is from this mental solidity that the ability to influence the world around you arises without apparent effort. While many rush, you observe. While many explain themselves, you remain firm. While many try to convince, you let each word be calculated. This contrast is what creates presence, and presence creates impact. There's something unsettling about someone who doesn't react as expected. People get used to predictable behaviors, and when they encounter someone who deviates from the norm, they try to understand them. They try to interpret. They try to decipher. They try to access them. In this process, without realizing it, they have already been conditioned to follow their rhythm. The invisible power works because it captivates the other mind in the attempt to understand who you are. And perhaps the real question is, are you ready to see beyond the obvious? Are you willing to develop the necessary perception to act where no one imagines there is movement? Because the path to power is not simple, it is not comfortable, and it is not for those in a hurry. It is for those who know how to wait for the right moment. It is for those who do not fear silence. It is for those who understand that influence is not displayed, it is exercised. The next step is to understand the hidden mechanisms that govern this game, the psychological principles that define how people are led without realizing it. And that is exactly what begins to be revealed in the next part. As you begin to perceive the subtle power of invisible dynamics, something curious happens. The world around you gains an uncomfortable clarity. Things that once seemed random now reveal patterns. Simple conversations transform into maps of intentions. Quick reactions expose deep vulnerabilities. Small pauses reveal more truth than long speeches. It's as if a veil is lifted, allowing you to see what has always been there, but most simply don't notice. And as this perception expands, you begin to notice the hidden logic behind behaviors that previously went unnoticed. Think of someone you know who seems to have control over any environment they enter. This person speaks little, but when they do, everyone listens. They never rush to answer, never try to compete for attention, never change their tone to adjust to the emotional climate of the group. Yet somehow they influence decisions, shape opinions, and direct conversations effortlessly. Perhaps you've wondered why this person seems so stable while everyone else wavers. The answer is simple and unsettling. They master the inner workings of social psychology, even unconsciously. They know when to remain silent, when to withdraw, and when to speak just enough. And the most intriguing thing is that it almost never seems like they are doing anything deliberate. But they are. This type of power becomes even clearer in everyday situations. Imagine, for example, a work meeting where everyone discusses ideas, interrupts each other, and competes for attention as if the strength of one's voice were synonymous with authority. Meanwhile, a single person remains calmly observing, showing no anxiety. They notice who talks too much out of insecurity, who tries to impress out of a need for validation, who disagrees out of habit, and who agrees out of fear. And only when the energy in the room begins to wane does she make a single, precise, objective, and impossible to ignore observation. Suddenly all attention converges on her. The room calms down. The final decision tends to follow what she said, and no one realizes that she orchestrated the entire environment simply by better understanding how people function. This phenomenon isn't limited to the professional environment. It appears in personal relationships, friendships, casual conversations, even in trivial conflicts. Notice how, in any group, there's always someone who almost never justifies themselves. They never waste time defending themselves against irrelevant accusations, never try to correct misunderstandings that don't directly harm their integrity, never show anxiety about being seen in the right way. This person seems untouchable because they understand a fundamental truth. The more you try to explain who you are, the more vulnerable you become. The need to justify oneself reveals insecurity, and insecurity is the preferred fuel of those who want to control you. When someone realizes that their emotions can be easily provoked, you lose ground. But when your mind remains firm in the face of external noise, control changes hands instantly. This type of stability has profound effects because it creates a sense of psychological density. People begin to behave differently around you. They think twice before saying something impulsive. They adjust their tone. They measure their words. They try to align themselves. And all this without you lifting a finger. The silent presence of someone who masters their own psychological center creates a kind of gravity. Whoever enters your field begins to orbit your rhythm. This seems mystical, but it's only mental. The invisible force you exert on the environment is a direct result of the visible force you have over yourself. There are times when this perception becomes even clearer. Perhaps you've already experienced a situation where someone tried to provoke you, expecting an explosive reaction, an impulsive response, a display of emotional weakness. And instead you remained calm, analyzing everything with a serenity that was almost irritating to the other person. At that moment, the person loses control of the situation. That's what they were looking for, your reaction. When you don't deliver what they expect, the power returns to your hand, and something curious happens. The one trying to control begins to feel exposed, vulnerable, even uncomfortable. That's how the game changes. It's not about strength. It's about the absence of it. But the most interesting part of all this is that once you understand these dynamics, you begin to realize how people reveal their weaknesses all the time without realizing it. They reveal insecurity when they speak too fast. They reveal fear when they laugh excessively to appear agreeable. They reveal neediness when they ask obvious questions just to get attention. They reveal jealousy when they try to silently disqualify someone. They reveal submissiveness when they agree with everything. The world is full of signals, and whoever reads these signals controls the narrative before it's even built. It is at this moment that the viewer begins to understand that invisible power is not an abstract concept, but a skill that anyone can develop. And as this awareness expands, it becomes impossible not to notice how life transforms when you master how you interpret and respond to human behavior. Conversations gain depth, conflicts lose strength, relationships become clearer, and the feeling of fragility gradually disappears, replaced by something rare in the modern world: true emotional stability. Still, there's an essential element that many ignore. Invisible power only endures when you avoid internal imbalance. A single moment of carelessness, a poorly managed emotion, an unresolved need, and everything can crumble. That's why those who truly influence are extremely selective in their exposure, their relationships, and even their battles. They understand that the first territory to protect is their own inner self, and it is precisely this understanding that opens the way to the next revelation. The deepest influence doesn't occur when you control the environment, but when you control your social energy almost strategically, using it at the exact moments when it can generate maximum impact. This layer begins to reveal itself in the next part. The feeling of observing the world through the crack of a half-open door is more common than we admit. Sometimes we walk through life realizing that something bigger moves behind the scenes, something that influences behaviors, decisions, and reactions that seem to arise from nowhere. At certain moments, we feel we are close to understanding this invisible structure, but it quickly slips away like dust that crumbles at the touch. It is in this gray area, between what we see and what we sense, that the true mechanisms of power operate. And it is here that many realize for the first time that the game has never been just about strength, words, or intelligence. It has always been about reading a fine reading of the human soul, of its gaps, its needs, its silent fears. When we begin to understand this, something changes internally. Interactions cease to seem random. Conflicts take on a clearer outline, and the intentions of others become less obscure. An exaggerated compliment begins to sound artificial. A sudden attack loses some of its impact, and even the silence of others becomes an interpretable piece of information. But this new vision doesn't arise from a mystical revelation. It is consolidated through the practice of observing without judging, perceiving without reacting, and interpreting without rushing. It's a mental training that few have the patience to develop, but which brutally differentiates those who merely participate in the world from those who can, even minimally, direct it. Have you ever wondered how many times you reacted before understanding the real intention behind a gesture? This refinement of perception doesn't make life easier. On the contrary, it becomes deeper, more intense, more nuanced than previously noticed. We discover that people don't just speak with words. They speak with hesitations, with averted glances, with omissions, with subtle breaks in their voices. We're talking about a level of reading that isn't openly taught, but that has always been within reach of those willing to observe it. And when we perceive these hidden layers, a new responsibility arises. What to do with this knowledge? Ignoring it is impossible. Using it lightly is dangerous, and keeping it to oneself can lead to a kind of silent isolation. How would you react to noticing that people reveal much more than they intend? From this point on, we enter even more delicate territory. It's not enough to identify the signs. It's necessary to understand how they combine. An insecure person doesn't just manifest with exaggerated humility. Sometimes they use aggression to mask the emptiness they don't want to face. A manipulator rarely presents themselves as a villain. They appear as an ally, support, a solution. Someone who thirsts for control rarely raises their voice. They operate in a calm tone with affected rationality, appearing as someone who knows exactly what they're doing. It's in this confusion between surface and depth that many get lost, and precisely for this reason, so many remain trapped in the same situations, making the same mistakes and getting involved with the same types of people. After all, how many times have you approached someone who seemed trustworthy, only to discover too late what was behind the mask? There's a crucial point in this journey: understanding your own shadows. It's no use wanting to see the world clearly if you still fear confronting your contradictions. We tend to project insecurities, exaggerate threats, interpret non-existent intentions precisely because we don't like to admit our weaknesses. It's impossible to read others if you haven't learned to read them first. And it's not a pleasant process. It's about facing discomfort without seeking distractions, admitting impulses, flaws, vulnerabilities. Only then does perception become purified, ceasing to reflect internal distortions and finally mirroring reality. Have you ever wondered what parts of yourself have been hindering your ability to see the world as it really is? When we achieve this combination of self-reading and external reading, something rare happens. Suddenly, patterns become predictable, intentions become decipherable, and situations that previously seemed confusing begin to present a surprisingly clear internal logic. It's not clairvoyance, it's not divination, it's not manipulation. It's simply vision. A vision that has always been available, but which requires courage, silence, and discipline to develop. From this point, we enter a new stage where the world ceases to be a chaotic flow of events and transforms into an intelligible chessboard, where each movement, each word, each silence takes on its own weight. And when you finally see this, you realize that the game was never against others. The game was always against your own blindness. As we delve into the deeper layers of this invisible game, something curious happens. We begin to realize how certain and probable events reveal truths we would never notice just by observing the surface. Sometimes it's a gesture that arises at the exact moment someone tries to hide their intention. Other times it's a coincidence so precise that it seems designed to expose what is really happening. There are accounts that illustrate this perfectly, and one of them begins in an ordinary waiting room where nothing seemed worthy of attention. A man sitting in the corner, seemingly distracted, discreetly observed the movement of people. He noticed that every time someone entered, everyone raised their eyes almost simultaneously, as if seeking collective approval to interpret the presence of the new individual. The man realized that even the way they crossed their legs changed depending on whether the person entering conveyed greater or lesser confidence. He didn't say a word, but by the end of that morning, he understood more about the insecurities of everyone there than they understood about themselves. The question that inevitably arises is, how many times have you acted automatically, revealing more than you intended, without realizing that someone paying attention could read everything? This ability to perceive what escapes conscious control also manifests itself in improbable scenarios. Research conducted years ago investigated how people react to unexpected silence, the kind that arises when a sentence should continue but doesn't. The results showed that most tend to fill the void with involuntary confessions, justifications, or abrupt changes in behavior, as if the silence were an open window to their vulnerability. There were reports of individuals who, when confronted only with a neutral gaze, I emotionally collapsed without a single word being spoken. This phenomenon perhaps explains why some people with a strong presence manage to extract truths that were never asked for. Silence used strategically is not absence. It is pressure. And when we realize this, we begin to see how certain people dominate entire environments without raising their voices, simply understanding that people fear emptiness more than direct confrontation. These situations repeat themselves in almost unbelievable ways. Once, a researcher recounted a casual experiment he conducted with colleagues. Instead of greeting them enthusiastically as he always did, he decided to act neutrally, maintaining an unaltered expression and firm posture. In less than 2 minutes, 3 different people asked if he was irritated, tired, or disappointed. He simply replied that he was fine, but realized that the others' reactions had nothing to do with him and everything to do with their own insecurities. That simple change in posture revealed that many were emotionally relying on an image he conveyed without realizing it. When that image changed, even subtly, they lost the point of reference that comforted them. This type of episode shows how much more predictable we are than we imagine, and how small changes in the way we present ourselves can completely change the dynamics of an environment. When you begin to see these patterns, social life ceases to seem chaotic and begins to reveal itself as a meticulous dance, in which each movement is guided by internal impulses that people try in vain to disguise. It's almost impossible not to wonder how so many human interactions function merely as desperate attempts at self-protection. We observe people who laugh too loudly to compensate for their own insecurity, others who rush to fill any silence, as if they fear being alone with their own thoughts, and those who use exaggerated information to appear important without realizing that the exaggeration reveals the emptiness they are trying to hide. And all this becomes so clear when viewed calmly that it's hard to believe we spent so many years blind to this evidence. By understanding these dynamics, the relationship with invisible power becomes more pragmatic. The world ceases to be a collection of random situations and begins to function as an organism full of unspoken rules. You start to predict how someone will react simply by observing their behavior patterns. You know when a person is about to try to manipulate a situation, when they are about to retreat, or when they are rehearsing an emotional attack. And even if you don't want to influence anyone, this reading allows you to avoid traps, reduce conflicts, and keep your energy protected. It's like walking through a minefield with the advantage of seeing where each explosive is buried. You don't need to step on any of them. You just need to know where not to step. But the most surprising part of this process is that when you change your own way of being, the people around you change too. Often, without realizing it, you become the fixed point around which the emotions of others oscillate. Your calmness reduces tensions. Your silence filters intentions. Your presence prevents excesses. And this influence is not achieved by force, but by the stability you transmit. It is a presence that does not demand respect, but naturally obtains it. A presence that does not demand space, but causes the environment to spontaneously offer it space. This is not magic or an innate gift. It is a direct consequence of a deep understanding of human psychology and the inner mastery that arises from this understanding. And when that transformation finally happens, when you realize you no longer react as before, nor fear as before, nor get lost in the details as before, you enter a new mental state. It's as if you've advanced to a level where people remain the same, but you are no longer affected in the same way. Provocations lose their power. Emotional games become evident. Attempts at control seem amateurish. Social life reorganizes itself around you. And it is at this point that we begin to enter even deeper territory, where we not only read the world, but begin to shape it discreetly and intentionally, something that is only revealed in the next part. The darkness of that night seemed denser than any previous one, as if the atmosphere itself reacted to the weight of what was about to happen. You walked in silence, feeling the cold ground beneath your feet, while each distant sound took on exaggerated dimensions in your perception. It was as if the whole world was suspended, awaiting the outcome of something that had been brewing throughout your journey. Nothing in the air hinted at immediate danger, but there was an intuitive certainty that any misstep could trigger irreversible consequences. Still, you moved forward, guided not by pure courage, but by the silent conviction that it was no longer possible to retreat. At some point, without realizing it, you had crossed the border between who you were and who you are about to become. And now all that remained was to move forward to discover the cost of this transformation. As night enveloped the empty paths, you felt a sudden shift in the atmosphere, as if invisible gazes were observing your posture, your rhythm, your intentions. There was no one around, and yet the feeling didn't diminish, becoming almost tangible. Your mind began to project possible scenarios, ambushes, revelations, unexpected encounters. The tension didn't come from the unknown itself, but from the fact that, for the first time, you were prepared to face it. That newly acquired strength, which had gradually formed through previous lessons, now pulsed like an instrument finally ready to be used. The silence no longer crushed you. It strengthened you. Even so, a persistent question emerged, as inevitable as it was necessary. How far are you willing to go to discover what has always been denied to you? It was at that moment that the first twist of the night presented itself. In the distance, a figure appeared, motionless, almost fused with the darkness. It didn't approach, didn't call, didn't threaten. It simply observed. There was something unsettlingly familiar about that presence, as if it had accompanied your walk long before this moment. As you approached, details began to take shape. The rigid outline of the shoulders, the erect posture, the calculated serenity. But when you finally got close enough, you realized it wasn't someone real. The figure seemed like a projection, a memory embodied by the very tension of the night. It didn't speak, but it communicated more than words could. It was a living memory of who you used to be, a representation of the past trying to reclaim space. And, seeing it so clearly, you understood that this apparition wasn't an obstacle, it was a test. How many times in life have you been about to move forward, but been pulled back by older versions of yourself that insisted on surviving? The image began to dissolve into thin air, dissipating like smoke carried by the wind. The path was empty again, but something within you had shifted once more. It wasn't just about continuing. It was about making an inner commitment to the person you were becoming. This change, though silent, was profound. A sense of urgency gripped your steps, not because something threatened you, but because something called to you. In the distance, a sudden gleam broke through the darkness, not bright enough to be full light, but intense enough to attract your attention. It was impossible to identify the source, but there was a promise of revelation there. You felt your heart race, not from fear, but from anticipation. How many times in your life have you felt you were about to understand something that had remained hidden for too long? As you approached the glint, you realized it was a reflection from a metallic surface partially buried in the ground. It wasn't a weapon, nor an ordinary object. It was a fragment of something larger, something ancient, as if it had been intentionally left there, waiting for the right person to find it. You bent down and cautiously touched it, feeling its cold, uneven texture. And then, for the first time that silent night, a sound echoed, not a physical sound, but an inner noise that resembled a memory awakening. A memory you didn't know you possessed, but which suddenly made sense. That fragment seemed to carry a purpose that connected directly to your journey. Could it be that this entire path had been guided by something you hadn't yet perceived? Upon lifting the object, a stream of thoughts formed with astonishing speed, aligning previously scattered ideas, reorganizing seemingly loose feelings, revealing hidden connections. The tension of the night dissolved into understanding, but not relief. On the contrary, a new weight took its place, the weight of knowledge. It was as if at that very moment you had received the final piece of a puzzle whose outline you already knew, but whose center remained empty. Now, finally, the complete picture begins to form, and it wasn't exactly what you expected. What kind of truth are you willing to accept when it doesn't correspond to what you wished to find? As he put the fragment away, he realized it wasn't just an object. It was a symbol, a reminder, a marker of the final transition. The path ahead no longer seemed frightening. It seemed necessary. Every step from then on would be a conscious choice, not an instinctive reaction. Every movement would carry the weight of acquired lucidity. And as he advanced back into the awaiting darkness, there was a growing certainty that the next stage would not be just a continuation, but a definitive confrontation with that which had shaped his story from the beginning. The night hadn't ended, but now both the silence and the approaching denouement belonged to him. And the only remaining question, the one that would echo until the final moment, was simple and profound. Are you ready? Night was beginning to fall, as if the world itself were slowly opening up to reveal what had always been hidden behind the shadows. You walked without haste, not because the path was easy, but because something within you already understood that the outcome no longer depended on speed, but on awareness. Each step seemed to bring back fragments of everything you had lived through so far: silent challenges, unexpected detours, internal trials. Now, however, all those previously scattered moments aligned like pieces that finally revealed the whole picture. There was a strange, almost indescribable feeling. It wasn't relief, nor victory, but a lucidity that settled in definitively. For the first time, you realized that the entire journey hadn't been about achieving something external, but about awakening something internal. The journey was never a path outward. It was always a return inward. As you moved forward, a feeling of lightness arose, as if part of the weight, that old, silent weight you had carried from the beginning, was detaching itself, not because it disappeared, but because it ceased to be an anchor. It was as if you finally understood that the shadows that accompanied you were not enemies, but signs. They pointed to unresolved fears, postponed choices, dormant potential. Recognizing them now gave meaning to the previous chaos, and it was precisely this clarity that opened space for an unexpected question. How many truths have you avoided for fear of facing what they will demand of you? The answer didn't need to be spoken, only understood. This silent understanding was what made everything so transformative. The surrounding landscape began to brighten, not yet revealing the sun, but indicating that it was coming. It was impossible not to remember the figure you had encountered before, that projection representing who you used to be. Now, looking back in perspective, you could perceive that that apparition was not an obstacle, but a mirror created by your own mind, so that you could confront what was ready to be left behind. And this realization brought with it something powerful. You no longer needed to fight against old versions of yourself. It was time to integrate them, understand their origins, and appreciate their functions, because even your flaws carried lessons that brought you to this point. You finally understood that growing up is not about destroying who you were, but about rearranging each experience in its proper place. By this point, the walk no longer felt like a physical journey, but a profound inner shift. Layers of thought came and went, making room for something broader. The tension of the night had almost completely dissolved, replaced by a firm and unshakable serenity. It wasn't a naive or passive peace. It was an acquired, conquered stability. A silent strength that is born when someone realizes they no longer need to prove anything to anyone, only to act. And this action doesn't come from impulse, but from conviction. When you began to notice this new state, something curious happened. The landscape around you ceased to matter. What mattered now was how you positioned yourself in relation to it. You finally understood that power is not control, but interpretation. It's not imposition, but direction. With this growing clarity, the path began to transform again. Not because of external change, but because you were seeing with different eyes. It was like observing an ordinary scene after learning to identify its hidden symbols. Everything acquires meaning. Every detail seemed to communicate something. And then, in an almost imperceptible moment, you realized what had truly been placed before you from the beginning. Not a mission, but a choice. It was always about deciding between repeating patterns or taking responsibility for your own story. And this responsibility, though fraught with effort, was the true key. Without it, nothing changes. With it, everything is reorganized. It was at this point that something unexpected happened. An old memory emerged, not of a specific event, but of a feeling. That feeling that precedes a major change, when you don't yet know what's going to happen, but you sense that something enormous is about to be revealed. That feeling returned now, but with a completely different tone. Before, it generated anxiety. Now, it generated strength. The difference was in you, and understanding it led to one last question, perhaps the most important of all. What will you do with all of this when the night finally ends? The answer won't come readily. It needs to be born from practice. This is where the inner journey transforms into concrete action. You've already realized that courage isn't the absence of fear, but a commitment to the right direction. Now, this commitment needs to be expressed daily, in small gestures, in discreet decisions, in choices that no one sees. This is how consistency is built. This is how power is built. And above all, this is how a life that doesn't depend on external approval is built, because it finds its center within yourself. Every step from here on is a vote for the kind of person you want to be, and it doesn't matter where you are now. What matters is the direction you choose every day. When the light finally began to break through the horizon, you understood what the entire journey had been trying to teach you. The outcome wasn't about reaching a destination, but about becoming someone capable of building your own path. Transformation isn't an isolated event. It's a way of being. And if you've made it this far, it means you're ready to take the next step, the real step, the concrete step, the one that changes not just your night, but your life. In the end, it all comes down to this, the silent and firm decision to act in accordance with who you have become. If this story resonated with you, leave your mark here. Like this video, share what you felt, comment even anonymously if you prefer, and subscribe to the channel. Your presence strengthens this journey and opens space for more people to awaken what they carry within themselves. The transformation begins now, and you are already on the path.